And welcome, everyone. Welcome once again to another episode of From Scratch, the podcast. I'm your host, James W. Falcon. Tonight, we are diving deep into the rich and vibrant world of the Orishas, exploring the beauty of African traditional religions and the systems. We'll take a closer look at traditional faith walks, the powerful practice of ancestor veneration, and the significance of altars in these spiritual practices. Plus, we'll discuss the intriguing topic of dating outside of your faith and how that intersects with personal beliefs and practices. We invite you to join the conversation in our live chat. Share your thoughts, ask questions, and connect with us on the YouTube channel From Scratch the Podcast. So let's go ahead and embark on this enlightening journey together. Let me bring on the founder and my amazing co-host, Teresa Angela.
Hello, hello. How are you?
All right.
How's everybody doing?
Say it again.
I said, how is everybody doing?
Oh, everything is awesome. We want to welcome all of our viewers, our listeners, and our soon-to-be chatters. Join us, folks. We have Farrah that says good night. Hi, Farrah. Thank you for joining us. Welcome to the podcast again.
Hey, Farrah. So what's good, James? What have you been doing since we were here last on our
Well, I spend most of my
last
time,
week?
Teresa Angela, coaching and doing schoolwork. That's typically where I devote most of my time and attention.
That's good. That's good. Not much over here, just working and a few things. So for me, I announced my yearly hiatus from tarot. I normally take my break in September. September is usually a really busy month for me, but it's a little hard. And even though it's been some years, it is a time that I like to just reflect on. It's my sister's birthday, and then I celebrate and I honor her for her passing in September. And school begins for Carly, so that whole rat race of making sure she's keeping to schedules and just kind of focusing on school and such. But also, I'm going to announce I'm going to be a grandma, a dog grandma again pretty soon. I think it's going to happen tomorrow. So, this little break from the tarot is going to allow me to bond with our new little furry friend. And so, tarot is going to close on Halloween, October 31st. Will be the last booking I'm going to accept. And I will open, I believe, the second week of January 2025. I enjoy the break, and I'm just going to focus on hypnosis for now. Outside of that,
That sounds like a busy, busy life and schedule.
it is. It so is.
Wow. Awesome, folks. We welcome Miss Kerez Carfan with us once again. Hi, Kerez. How are you? It's great to have you join us again this evening. And everyone, folks, we really appreciate your love, your support. Last week's episode was off the chart, and we had so many incredible responses, an amazing array of participation. And, folks, thank you so much, everybody. We are climbing in views, popularity, and all the other metrics. So we're excited about that. Thanks, everybody, for your love and support. Stay with us.
Hey, Caress. So let's just jump right in. We are at 8:04 p.m. and we have a lot to cover. So, James, tell everyone, what is your faith? What's your belief system?
My belief system, I am a Christian. I believe in Christ as Savior and Lord, and I am about 30 years in.
And have you been in that same system since you were an infant? Is this something that your parents brought you up in, or is this something you discovered as an adult?
Well, to the degree that I am practicing and worshiping now, this has been since adulthood. But it was interesting. I was raised as a Baptist in church. We did church a lot. We did church multiple times a week, all day on Sunday with the dinners at 6 p.m., the whole deal. But I went to Roman Catholic private school from kindergarten, actually from pre-K through to 12th grade. So I always had a Catholic influence. But what I got sandwiched in the middle about was all of the Old Testament favorite stories, Noah's Ark, Adam and Eve, and all those things. I became really, really aware of those stories, and at a certain point in time, a light kind of turned on, and it just made sense to me. So when I was about 23, I think it was 23, uncle died, and I went to his funeral, and the pastor preached a sermon, and for the first time, it made sense to me, and I accepted the Lord as my Savior at 23, and something cataclysmic happened for me. It was like something inside exploded open, and I started to kind of hear and to see things a little bit better and easier, and the whole journey just started to make sense up until that point, and I got a good, clear picture of what I felt like I was supposed to do going forward. So I joined a couple of churches, and in the course of that, I felt like God had called me to preach. So then I started a public ministry, and I spent some time as a student learning, and then somewhere in the mix of things, a few years thereafter, I went to Bible college and seminary. I got a degree in biblical studies and returned to a church setting where I served about 9 to 10 years as a pastor at some point also in the timeline. And then things kind of came to an abrupt ending, but my faith remained strong, and here I am at 54 and still serving God and still in the faith as passionately as I can be, trying to do whatever I can to help people in whatever way I can. And that's
So
just a
going
brief
so
kind
going
of,
to Catholic school, you know how to genuflect really good, don't you?
absolutely. My genuflecting was on point. You hear me? I could do it.
So you're a professional sitter, kneeler, and stander.
Yeah,
Did
I
I,
had
all
my
in that
had
order,
my
right?
kneel my kneeling game was the best. Let me try to tell you something right now. I always tried to stand, sit, and to kneel faster than the old people in the
Mm-hmm.
congregation. That was
Mm-hmm.
always my goal. But I love being in church. It was just something about that whole, it was you had to have a reverence. You couldn't say things, you couldn't talk but so loud. And all that reverence just kind of intrigued me. So somewhere in the mix in the back of my mind, I just felt drawn to some type of religious observation on a deeper level and some kind of service. And it started very early on, and it got stronger and stronger and bigger the older I got. So that's kind of where we were.
So that was the opposite for me. I think my mom, she perfected her pinches when we were in church. The smacks. I mean, the discipline was off the charts sitting in church. Um, I enjoyed being in the service because I'm a people watcher, but I didn't so much really enjoy being around these life-size statues that seem to be staring at you. And just being a curious child, as I aged, it just didn't, it wasn't resonating as much as it was to the people who were my age. I mean, people, we were maturing. We were going to mass so much because I attended Catholic school as well. Um, but it was more of a ritual. It was more of, it was just a routine. And I think I may have been 19 when I told my mom I didn't want to go anymore. But I had to because I had to drive her. But I was checked out at that young age. So growing up in this strict Roman Catholic household, around 17, 18 is where I found myself really questioning what am I doing? What is this? What does this mean for me? And does this mean that I have to stay in this for the rest of my life? Because again, it was the routine. I had received all the sacraments that I was supposed to, and I felt unsure about things. I knew internally and emotionally that I wasn't being fed completely there, but I didn't know how to say it, and I didn't know how to ask for help in that. I continued to follow my own curiosities, and I spent a lot of time in nature, specifically the beach. And I would swim almost every day. I went to Lindbergh Bay Beach, I went to John Brewer's Beach, and that's where I found peace. When I got my driver's license, I was able to really, spread my wings. But I started to develop my own practice that was then deeply resonating with how I was feeling. But I didn't have a word for it, and I didn't know why I was doing certain things, but going to the beach was my everyday thing. So swimming as far out past the markers or past the buoys was my thing, and I would just go as far as I could until I would get tired. And it was almost like I was daring the sharks to get me, and no one understood what I was doing. At some point, I'm like, this is like a suicide mission. Like, what am I doing? But I was getting stronger physically, and I was taking myself past certain limits. Um, but looking back now, I understand that what I was doing, it was just me longing for an intimate connection with the spirit that rests in the ocean. I didn't know what energy was. I was just basically blind and just trying to find my way. I had no explanations. So as I aged, I continued my swimming, and I found that I was just drawing closer and closer to the ocean. I had no knowledge of who the Orisha is. I understand now that the woman who originally she read the cards for me. She was a Santera, which is a priestess in the faith. And so in Santeria, or it's Regla de Ocha, or Lukumi, it is the Afro-Caribbean, the Afro-Cuban religion, and it blends with Catholicism. And so having a clearer understanding now is that those who were enslaved and brought to Cuba and to other regions and other islands in the Caribbean, they hid their Orisha or their saint, their angels, behind the Catholic saints that was being imposed upon them. Regla de Ocha is the official title of this system, or Santeria. This is home for me. This is a monotheistic system, meaning I'm only anchoring myself to one God, and that is my Alpha and my Omega. This is the God that we speak of in the Bible. Um, he's called by a different name in the system, but this is where I plant my feet, and I am anchored here. It is a branch on the tree of Ifa, and I want to share this. The common misconception here is that people who practice an ATR or an African traditional religion, people assume that because you are here that you can't practice in another faith, and that's incorrect. In fact, I have found, and I know people who are in an ATR, but they still practice as Catholics. They still practice as Baptists. But it is so taboo to tell people that you are practicing this on this path, that people keep this to themselves. I also practice ancestor veneration. We'll talk about that later. And I have several altars in my home just for that. So that's my story.
That's a powerful story. Okay, Teresa Angela, can I do it? I mentioned, can I do it? Can I do it? Can I do it?
Oh boy.
So, folks, here's the situation. For 6 episodes now, we have been being co-hosts and very respectful in presenting topics to you. But what we haven't told you is the fact that Teresa and I are together. Hold on, let me ring the bell. Hold on. Teresa is my forever person. and we have been enjoying a 7-year journey together. And one of the things that I wanted Teresa to do, y'all, and I'm going to try not to burst into tears when I tell you this. So, y'all, for those of you that know this incredible woman, Teresa Angela is like, I am so connected to this woman. And I've told her many times, and I'll tell you guys listening, this woman is so amazing to me. I don't know whether sometime to hug and kiss her or to have her sign an autograph for me. Like, she is such an immense figure to me as a partner, as a lover, as a human being. She is, like, I'll put it to you this way to make a long story much shorter. The only woman I have ever known in my life that possesses the wisdom, the brilliance, and some of the other gifts and talents like the gift of administration and other things. The only other woman that I've known that has carried those kinds of attributes was my mother. Listen to me, folks, when I tell you this. Teresa blows my mind every day. We did an episode on magic, on the Everyday Magic, a couple episodes ago. Teresa is the person that I've watched carry this. Like, I have never seen a person in any belief system that has the favor of God and carries the magic like she does. She is beautiful and brilliant. Like, the person, this woman, literally, if she walks across the street, and I'm not jiving, if she walks across the street, Teresa turns heads. Truck drivers stop what they're driving and holler at her. Like, she is drop dead gorgeous. But as beautiful as she is on the outside, she is equally as gorgeous on the inside. And we had fallen in love. And one of the things that I so prize in my connection to Teresa is the fact that she is so well read and she can talk for hours about just about anything. And so us coming together in friendship and in some other aspects, we have shared hours upon hours, literally, of conversation and communication about science, life, religion, relationships. Like, it's no coincidence that she is a spiritual coach, as I am a life coach, relationship coach, business and career coach, because we talk our love for humanity and for people, our passion to want to see people get to their next levels. We share that. And so one of the things that I thought to do very early on was to have a forum where this wonderful woman can share from her heart and soul her passions. And this podcast she created, and I'm supporting her because I feel like the world needs to hear what she has to say. She has such a depth of wisdom, of insight, and of giftings that I just felt like people need to know. So we created this podcast for her to do her thing. So when you see me kind of fade to black, I'm just supporting her, and I'm wanting her to be a blessing to you guys in the audience. I mean, in listening, as much as she has been to me. She is that extraordinary. And in all of that, she is so humble. She is such a humble, quiet spirit. She loves to laugh and joke. She has jokes for days. Like, she is such a well-rounded human being. Anyway, the point is that one of the conversations I wanted us to have, that she also agreed with me, that we would have this communication about mixed faith. Because as a Christian, if I can just take a minute more to tell this story. So when we met, I was on a spiritual journey and Teresa was on a spiritual journey. I never forget this conversation. And I kind of asked her roundabout, hey, what are you practicing? And Teresa said, I'm a witch. And I was like, oh, okay. Okay, she's a witch. Now listen, I'm listening to her. I'm seeing her beauty. And I said to myself initially, I don't care what this woman is practicing. I need whatever she's got. And so, but
Wow.
it didn't frighten me as a Christian that this woman that I'm interested in identifies as a witch, because one of the first things I kind of said was, I hear you. And then about 2 or 3 days or conversations later, I said, Teresa, listen, I said, I hear you say you're a witch. I said, but I'm not sure that's accurate. And she looked at me like, what? And I said, because you seem to be drawing from the same well I'm drawing from. So I don't sense a darkness. I don't sense anything unholy or unpure. I said, I'm not really sure you're tagging yourself accurate. I said, I don't want to be offensive, but I sense very clearly that you're getting your insight, your life force is from the same place I'm drawing mine from. And she looked at me, and then we just went on with the friendship and the communication. And she would share different things with me about the journey she was on as a witch. And I never once said, you need to come out of there. Oh my God, that's so good. We just continued to talk and share. And that's the way our relationship has been. We have a very rich, vibrant relationship that is really rock solid, built on communication. And we just enjoy chopping up community. Like we'll strike up a conversation at 3 a.m. She'll roll over and tell me something. I'll go, let's talk about it. And then there we go. 3.5, 4 hours later, we got Google search up. We're printing stuff out. We're comparing notes from one of the chat GBT things. And it's just been so cool. So part of what you hear us talking about is literally stuff that she and I have batted around a few times between us. And so we wanted today just kind of let you know that's what this is. This podcast was born out of her and my rich communicative relationship. And we wanted to bring that topic, this topic, and all the others to your time and attention for you to enjoy and for you to hear from her. So that's what this is, and that's what the big secret is, and that's what's happening. Teresa and I just got to say this, y'all. Teresa got them cakes, y'all. Let me tell you.
Listen, what we not doing.
Teresa is fine
So
as they
what?
come. She
Okay,
is
so
so
you
fine. I'm
done?
trying to tell you.
You done
Listen,
been our air now.
one time Teresa was talking to me, and I didn't understand that she was from the Virgin Islands. I didn't understand that the woman I was seeing had an accent because she had perfect English to me. There was no, I couldn't tell she was from somewhere else. And I remember one time she looked at me and she said, when I get to know you more, I'll start to tell you and show you who I am. And she said, this voice I'm using is not even mine. And I said to myself, is this woman on the run? What is going on with this chick? I said, you know what? I don't care who is chasing her and how far we'll just be Bonnie and Clyde then, goddamn. Because we are going to be together, is what I said to myself. I
Because you
didn't
was
care what was
Bazadi.
happening, who she was running from. I didn't know she was in witness protection, y'all. I just didn't care.
You was
I had
already
just
Bazadi.
tasted,
That's what it was.
I had just got enough of this communication from this woman, and she blew me away from day one. And that's what it's been, and that's what God allowing it to continue to be. So that's what I wanted to just share with y'all tonight to let you know. So when you hear me and we're doing the co-host thing, we jiving, y'all. This is really a Teresa James thing that we're inviting everybody else into. And as I don't know if I said this or not, but Teresa got them cakes, y'all. She got them.
You know what? First of all, to clarify, let's go back. The term witch, I was using the word bruja. There's no other way to really get you to understand what it is that I do, how long I've been doing it, and it's the easiest way and it's the best description. Now, am I Glinda or am I the Wicked Witch of the West? It depends on the day. But in either way, what you didn't share is that when I disclosed this to you, you went and ran your mouth to all of your family. I really like this chick, and she's a witch. So these people were ready to burn me at the stake. So I just kept it going. So back to the topic. With the Orisha and with the ancestors and with this whole connection. So first, I'm gonna say I really wanted to be very private with this relationship because I lived out loud before. And my last marriage was very public, and everything that we did and everywhere we went, I documented, and it was all over Facebook, and it ended really bad. So I said to myself then that the next relationship that I get involved in, it would be just for me. So we don't post, I don't tag him in things because I don't even follow James on any of his platforms. We're not friends on social media. Like I was adamant that this was information that I was not going to disclose. Um, Sometimes I will put on there that I'm in a relationship on Facebook, but I just wanted to keep this sacred to me. And I still feel that way. But to be authentic and to be very genuine and just to be where we are and to try to keep this camouflaged with my friends and family on this podcast, because if you're close to me, then you do already know this information, and most of the family that I have left has already been introduced to James, so everybody knows him and everybody loves James, but publicly this is not common knowledge. So this is our coming out today. But outside of that, James and I have a very unique connection. And we met, like you said, about 7 years ago. And when you meet a person, um, and their soul is just extremely familiar to you, it's not something that you can just kind of bypass. And so I watched him from a distance. And whenever there was an opportunity to connect, to have conversations, the conversations were getting longer and longer. So each conversation was where it would have been like a half hour, it turned into an hour, and then it was 2 hours, and then it was a whole day, and then it was all day, all night. But the richness of the conversations was unlike anything that I haven't ever experienced. And I have very close friends, I have best friends, and I had a very strong bond with my oldest sister. And this relationship feels very much familiar. It feels just like the connection that I had with my sister, but it was still yet different. So when I learned that James was a pastor, I laughed to myself because I was like, well, this is going to end really bad, because how can he be a pastor and then he's interested in someone who is into all of this? And for the record, I too was ministering. I got my license to preach in Maryland, I believe in like 2013, 2014, and I was actively preaching and ministering specifically to women on the weekends. So I I can't discount that I am where I'm supposed to be at all times in my life. Even when I'm getting lemons thrown at me, I am always divinely placed. And I just felt like what that woman said to me when I was 19. She said I was going to have difficult marriages, two of them exactly, and four children, four live births, but there would be a third man. And I have searched. I've just kind of been looking around for a long time for who this third man is. And this imprint or this energy that I was then faced with 7 years ago, it presented, and I'm like, this is who this is. So he's been an amazing support for me. He's been a friend. He was there when my mom transitioned, which was a mess. And then most recently with Steve, my brother. So this connection, it is so multifaceted, and he's always been the cheerleader telling me, you need to get a website. And I'm like, I don't want a website because I'm underground. I don't like to be looked at, y'all. For real. This is why this is audio only. I will post a shit ton of selfies, but I don't want my energy taken. So I prefer still shots. So this is why we only do, and he's respecting even this decision where other people would have forced my hand to do video. I'm comfortable being a background singer for real. But outside of that, James has been nothing but good to me. He's been such a good friend. And now we blurred lines, and we are, connecting in ways that I'm still unfolding who he is in my life. And I'm sure he's still discovering who I am to him. But it just works. It just fits. And I thought, you know, that this is my fairy tale. And then 6 months into knowing who he is, he had a massive right brain stroke, which blew me because how did we get here? And it was the prayers of the Ori. It was the prayers from my friend who is initiated in Ifa. It was an Ifa prayer that I held his head in my hand at Hopkins, and I prayed this prayer to bring him back. And guess what? It worked. He does get my nerves, he does, but he came back. And so I just feel like I owe so much to this Yoruba religion. I owe so much to the Orisha. And he has had experiences, even him calling himself, what he is, and he is on his Christian path. But even when he was unable to speak, the Orishas presented. And so even when I went and I had my first reading, before I went into ceremony to get my Eleke beads, my godmother in the faith looked at him. She pointed to him and she said, "Does he know?" And I said, "He's coming to grips with certain things." But she said, "Shango follows him." And I said, "Oh, we know." This is common knowledge. But I wanted to publicly give him his flowers and, just let him know, because I've said it to a lot of my friends, the little bit of friends that I have, and the handful of blood family that I do have left, is that like James he's my person. He is. My kids know this. My kids love him. So it has been an incredible, sometimes very ugly journey to get here. But when you find your person, you know it. So Mr. James with his little bell, he works my nerves, y'all, but he really is the jelly to my peanut butter, y'all. He is. So
It's
back.
just a fun thing. And I just want to share this. Thank you, Teresa, for my flowers. The thing that I want to share is as a Christian, I can tell you, and I'm not trying to I'm not trying to bring any time and attention to who I am and what I believe and how I practice. And I'm certainly nobody's standard. But I can tell you many Christians would have looked at this, and as soon as Teresa said witch or anything other than Christian, they would have run the other way. Because it's very, we tend to do, we Christians, we people, it is unfortunate that we have bought so many lies, and so we are so frightened about things that don't look familiar. And so one of the things that I had learned years before meeting Teresa was from a mentor, and he said something very keen to me. We were at a restaurant, this incredible man of God who was mentoring me, and I'll never forget, we were eating Chinese food. It was a Chinese food buffet, and we're throwing plates back. And he said, "Hey, James," he said, "crack open your fortune cookie and let's see what it says." And I looked at him like, "Man, we don't do that." And he was like, "No, no, it's all right." And he cracked it open and he read it and he slid it over to me. He said, "See that?" And he said, "Listen to me." He said, "Phelps, listen." He said, "I want you to know something." He said, "We believe in Jesus." He said, "But truth is truth no matter who tells it to you. Because if he said, there's one truth in the universe. And if that truth is presented to you, it's true no matter wherever you receive it, whether it's in America or abroad." And that thing rang with me. And I've carried that for 35 years now. And it's the truth. So listening to Teresa, and then understanding there was a project. So I'm an author and a poet. I do a bunch of different things by the grace of God. And I was hired to work on a project where I had to, and I'm pausing because I signed an NDA, a non-disclosure agreement. So I'm being very careful about what I say. And I was asked to contribute to the making of a story. And I had to do a lot of research on the African traditional religion. So with that project and Teresa assisting me by going through her own journey, I came to realize that a lot of what we do in church settings is really a carryover from what takes place in the Misas, in the ATR, in the African tradition. So there was never any reason for me to be afraid. I was never any time scared. I was never frightened for my life. I never thought Teresa was going to jump up one day and stab me. It was none of that at any point in time. Now, I may have been stabbed for some other reasons, but it wasn't for those. It wasn't because of her faith and her practices. And so learning about we are so afraid sometimes that we run when we should investigate. So I took the time through communication and conversation with Teresa to understand exactly what the African traditional religions were. And so I understand now that much of any hesitation I had was Hollywood induced. People have demonized, they have villainized the ATRs. What voodoo has been presented to be is the furthest thing from it. What anything that's African traditional religion related, Hollywood has done their level best to taint it because it was ours, y'all. It's African, and everything African gets really, really slandered. And so understanding those pieces, I realized that our people had a belief system that warrants respect, period. Like, I don't have to be in it to appreciate what it is and what it's meant to our people. And I definitely don't have to be in it in order to understand the importance it has in the lives of our loved ones, in my case, in the life of Teresa. And so it was never something where I ever once thought, oh, she's going to need to come out of that if she's going to be with me. That was never the case, and nor will it ever be. Because who I am is who I am, and who she is who she is. And I choose to connect to her in the way that works for us. We have a good, vibrant, healthy relationship. Alicia is saying she's literally crying. Thank you. You have just shown so many that their truth is still true. That's absolutely right, Alicia. We welcome you, Alicia. We welcome our mother.
Alicia.
We welcome our mother, Miss Angelique Otley. Thank you, Mama, for being in, and everybody else that's in. Thank you so much, folks. We got a good, steady, healthy viewership. Thanks, everybody, for listening and for rocking with us through this broadcast and everything. So I never saw it as a Teresa against me thing. I don't think love would ever say that somebody's got to stop doing something. I knew who Teresa was when we met. I love this woman dearly. She is amazing. And listen, folks, Teresa is the person that if she could, there's no such thing as having too big a house. If we could afford having a mansion, Teresa would have every pet that we ever saw on the side of the road and every person who is homeless living with us. One of the things that helped me to understand that there was nothing to fear is what the Bible says. It says very plainly, and you shall know them by their fruit. And it talks about the fact that good trees don't bear bad fruit. And bad trees don't bear good fruit. So as watching her life and watching her deal with other people, watching her humanity, watching her love for her family and friends, I kept saying to myself, and I've been saying to her, I said, look, I know what you call yourself, but we do a lot of the same stuff because we're drawing from the same. So let me give you one other example. Teresa is an extraordinary card reader. Now, people would say, oh my God, you read tarot? Christians, I'm saying, my brothers and sisters in Christ, oh my God, you're connected to somebody that reads tarot. Let me tell you what tarot is. And I've watched her do this. I've heard her do this, folks. And I'm not telling you this to justify my actions and activities. I'm just speaking truth as I understand it from the multi-perspective viewpoints that I have. I have watched Teresa deal so lovingly with her client. This woman has a clientele of 100 people on record month to month. She's gotten as high as 200, and she doesn't advertise. This is word of mouth. So let me tell you about her card reading. So she calls it's called tarot reading. But let me tell you what the Bible says. It's the gift of knowledge, of wisdom, and prophecy. She tells people what's happening in their lives in a way that works for them. And people would say, oh my God, but that's demonic. No, it's not. Because the gift is by the same spirit that I honor. And in addition to that, the Bible says this, The way to tell a false prophet is just by what they say. If what they say comes true, then they're of God. If what they say doesn't come true, they're a false prophet. Folks, Teresa, in 7 years that I've known her, has never uttered a false reading. In other words, everything I've heard her say to her clients has come true, even down to the fact that several of her clients have clapped back at her and said, Teresa, I'm just not getting that reading you gave me last time. Like, I remember she said one thing to one client. She told a client who was like in her 50s or 60s, she said, a baby's going to come into your life. And the client told Teresa, you tripping, Teresa. I rock with you, but that is crazy because I'm too old. My tubes are tied. I don't even have a man and I'm not married. So I don't know what you're talking about. But that same client called Teresa a year later and said, guess what? And I can't remember the exact story, but it was something like she told Teresa, my neighbor had a baby and gave the child up for adoption. And I adopted the baby. And now I'm holding my daughter. And Teresa was like, okay. And she said, I'm sorry that I doubted you, Teresa. Like, it was hundreds of stories like that to where
Now, for the record, we have permission to share that story.
Yes, we do. Thank you, Teresa. Thank you. Because I'm getting too excited. So my point is that I've heard her never once utter a word that was not true. So how do you explain 7 years? Excuse me, that's the 7 years that I've seen. How do you explain 20 years being spot on? Because listen, according to the scripture, the devil cannot tell the future and he can't create anything. So if I'm listening to a woman use cards, so let me break it down this way. The African traditional religion practiced by our people, when they brought them here on ships to appease the white man, they hid their practices behind Roman Catholic saints. Let me tell you what Teresa has done. Teresa has hidden her worship, which is of the spirit that I serve, same Holy Spirit. She has hidden that behind tarot cards because the people that she deals with are from a culture that they would receive more knowing that somebody's using cards than if they carried a Bible. So Teresa, she uses her gift and she hides her gift in tarot cards. That is freaking brilliance to me because there are hundreds upon hundreds of people that she has legitimately helped. And now she's a hypnotherapist. I've seen her help people on a deeply intimate level. And so I'm not going to say any of that is satanic or ungodly. Absolutely not. Not according to the scriptures I know and read. So my point is, folks, I'm not saying that a mixed fest relationship is something that everybody should explore. That's not what I'm talking about. And that's not the point of this podcast. But I'm saying it works for Teresa and I because I think through love and through the lenses of love, we have learned to love, honor, and appreciate each other for who we are respectively. Is that enough? Can I take an offering now? So I hope that was clear, folks, is my point.
Yeah, that was clear. And, you know, also for the record, everybody gets readings. Everybody gets readings. Do not be fooled when people stand in the pulpit and say that card reading is divination and this, that, and the third. I'm reading pastors. I'm reading first ladies. I am reading deacons. I am reading overseers. Everybody wants tarot. So don't be fooled. But addressing the misconceptions that have been brought forward from or through Hollywood, and then I had some family members who would rage against my practice. Then we move into, you know, my appearance. Do I look like I belong in an African traditional religion? I have blonde hair. For the record, I've dyed my hair. My hair is not naturally blonde. I purposely dye my hair blonde. I'm not a blonde. And my eyes are gray. Sometimes they're blue on a good day. But I don't fit the mold. And being an Aries, I don't give a shit about a mold. I'm going where I'm being called because I have an assignment. And I'm here to do just that, to be in that assignment. I used to be upset when people would challenge me spiritually, and I would get into like some serious arguments because I wanted to be heard. And I have matured now, and I understand that sometimes trying to address the disrespect, it doesn't get me anywhere that I need to be, and I sure won't ever get there fast enough. So I don't have anything to prove at this point. I practice what I practice. I have a proven track record because spirit never lies. So when people say, well, if you're reading cards, who's saying this? Spirit. Your spirit, your higher self, your guardians, whether you believe in the Orisha or not, you have people assigned to you. You have guardians assigned to you from birth, at least two. Um, and every spirit speaks. It needs a vehicle here to interact. And that vehicle is usually inside of another person. So, how people feel about me, and I get all of the tea. My spirits tell me what people are saying about me. I get screenshots from people who are always in my corner. So I know what's being said. But what people are saying about me is that's no longer my business. My concern at this point is, how am I showing up for my ancestors? How am I showing up for my guardians and to my Orisha, and then to the Most High? And though there's no church that I attend at this point in my journey, there are misas or masses, prayer gatherings in the ile of my godparents in this religion. And so now we can talk, James, about the ancestors. What is that? Like, why am I always pumping up this ancestor talk?
It's very
So
interesting because, you know, again, these are terms that mean different things to different people in different practices in different cultures. I had a very pointed conversation with a family member who was like, anytime somebody brings up ancestors, I always like to shoot them down. And I said, why? I said, the book of Hebrews talks about all of the faithful people that believed in Jesus by faith are now part of what the book of Hebrews calls the great cloud of witnesses, which is what everybody else is referring to as your ancestors. That's where all the people have gone into this great cloud, and they are cheering us on so that we can cross the finish line of our journey. And they are a body that watch over us, and they're very actively involved in what we believing Christians do in this lifetime. So why are we so, but again, we're so quick to vilify and to criticize things without investigating. And I think therein lies the problem. So we consciously and mistakenly ostracize people in ignorance. And I just refuse to be in that number. And I want to hear what you have to say, and then let me determine the lenses that I want to use to honor that. I was talking to a fraternity brother of mine, and we were talking because I'm doing a podcast on some biblical stuff. And he hit me through a text, and he was like, hey, brother, what do you think about the Honorable Elijah Muhammad? And I responded back to him. I knew exactly who he was talking about and where it was going. And I said, I am very, very acquainted with the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. And I said it that way because if I had said what most Christians, oh, I don't believe in that fully, that's just some black empowerment stuff. But that man honored Elijah Muhammad. So if I didn't do that, I would show the person I'm connected to disrespect. And I wasn't willing to do that for the sake of making a faith stance. I don't think that's the way the Lord would have that to work. You honor people. You, what does it say in the scriptures? Give unto Caesar what belongs to Caesar, and unto God what belongs. That means have some practicality about you. There are certain things that need to happen in this earth realm that we need to fall in line with. It doesn't mean we have to agree with it. It just means you have to honor. You should honor certain things because it's what's required. End of story. And I did that, and he and I had a nice conversation by chat. And then I wound up reaching him by phone, and we talked for a couple hours. And he hung up the phone like, all right, Falk, I'm going to tune into your podcast, man, because he heard a human being, not somebody that was so Bible thumping that I turned him away. And to this day, that brother is a follower on this podcast. And he always sends me little tidbits. Hey, brother, appreciate what you said. Thanks so much. He sends me all kind of stuff about the Nation of Islam and other things that he comes across. And we have a respect. It doesn't have to be because what I believe is what I believe and everybody else is wrong. How about you believe what you believe and you shut up and listen and learn and gather some information before judgment never has to be a part of this. It's love and respect, and that's what I choose to do.
And that's where I wanted to also mention this little piece before I launch into the ancestor talk is what you're hearing. This is not a compromise. I'm not bending and he's not bending. He's in his lane and he's doing his thing and I'm in my lane. And we eventually we meet in the middle. But there's no compromising here because I'm not shifting and I'm not converting to anything. And I'm not expecting James to convert to what I'm doing. And that's just that. But when we talk about ancestors, we have to talk about the other A word, and that's altar. Because in order to connect and to commune, in order to start that collab, you have to have a space to meet. Now, it's not required once you make your connection, but it will be a good practice to make sure you maintain that relationship, because when we talk ancestors, we're talking about someone who once was here, who once walked this earth, who had a body. That person has now transitioned to that realm, and so they don't have a body anymore. The benefit of connecting and venerating your ancestor is to clear your own bloodline of its atrocities. I believe that the greatest, deepest work that you can do for yourself first is shadow work. And the most beneficial place to do this can be within your ancestral line. Cleaning up your legacy and your family's legacy by being better and doing more for your father's last name is like carrying a torch and being the light in the darkness of your own family. And isn't that what Christ came here to do? He came to clean up the bloodline. Whether people took him on or not, that was his assignment. And I keep saying it over and over. I feel like somebody needs to hear that. You have an assignment. You didn't just get here and come here to just pass through. You have a very specific assignment, and it's your job to figure out what that assignment is and then walk in that direction towards your purpose. So where do we meet with the ancestors? We have to provide for them a meeting ground. And that altar is going to be your space of the connection. And it's where we go to have an exchange. So the altar is where the seen and the unseen worlds are going to intersect. I've read tons of books, oh my God, about the Mesa Blanca. I've read so many things. I've followed so many YouTubers over the years who talk about the importance of the white table. And this is where everything on this table has to be white. It has to remain clean and pure. So if you go to church and you realize it's Communion Sunday, there's a table set. The cloth is white. Everything is perfect and in place because it has to be shown as a space of purity. Because why? You're going there to connect. So we're going to use specific items that's going to bridge that communication. So we would use cups of water to be like the place where the spirits have to come down, and they're going to use a cup of water to do that. Flowers, candles, photos, personal items that would maybe belong to the departed. And then there's tons of other types of altars. So you may have an altar set up for your ancestors. And you should always start with the ancestors first before you even think about touching an Orisha. You start in your own bloodline first. So you have a space you create and you're connecting with your loved ones. I had a very tiny space that contained a photo of my dad, my mom, and then my sister. And I dedicated a specific day of the week, which was Sunday, to replenish, to clean, to dust, to refill, to clean my cups of water, and just to make sure that I was doing my due diligence to make sure my space of connection was clean and sound. I had my mom's Bible open, and then I started adding more of their personal effects. And I started to see changes in my own life. I was asking for things, but then I was also making sure I was putting offering to them. And it is a remarkable connection once you make that connection. And it's just, in my mind, it's important to know how to connect in meaningful ways. Um, and shameless plug, I offer a one-on-one beginners altar class for anyone who might be interested. But any information that I offer, you can go out there and find it and source it for yourself as well. One last thing I want to mention before we launch into another piece of this, and I'm looking at the time, we are going to go over, so we're close to 9, but I know definitely we're going to go over on this one. I want to talk about silence, divine silence. We are so used to chaos. We are so desensitized to just noise that we miss very important opportunities for connection and for healing. Divine silence. The benefit and the beauty of silence. It is healing and it's life changing. We will avoid sitting in silence because it forces us to surrender. If you tell me that I can't go in to have an appointment for 5 or 10 minutes, the first thing I'm going to grab is my cell phone because I have a need to be constantly entertained. We need to learn to break ourselves away from electronics, and we need to surrender to the quiet. That's how we will hear from spirit. You don't have to do all these extra crazy things. No, you don't have to be vegan to hear or to have your third eye ignited. You don't have you literally control how this path is going to open for you. And it's something as simple as quiet and meditation. So something else is when you get into the divine silence or just in a space, stolen moments, 5 minutes before you can go inside of a building, 5 minutes before you can start your day. If you just sit in that space where you are controlling nothing but your own breath, you will hear from spirit. I'm guaranteeing it. Anything that you've earned in this life, it means nothing in that moment. Any money that you have, anything you own, the value is at zero. It means nothing because spirit doesn't care. Spirit is not a respecter of things and accolades. So we need to sit in the nothingness to listen. When we authorize and when we license ancestors to then speak to us and to intervene in our lives, and we form that bond, then we can be looked at as being the new authority in the bloodline. Those people have gone on. They're not with us anymore. You then become the front of the line. Self-examination is going to teach us how to take the initiative in order for that collaboration to begin. So you have to ask yourself, has the mission of my family been accomplished? Did the people who came before you, did they accomplish anything? What did they leave in the bloodline? Were they good people? Were they thieves? Were they liars? How do you now need to right those wrongs so that the bloodline can be clean? What role have you played in pushing the family name into the ground or putting it in lights? What can I do to heal my own family's legacy? What cords can I sever to safeguard those coming behind me so that they won't have to suffer as well? This is so big for me because I feel like it's just me. And usually the black sheep of the family is so lonely because no one understands you. You're speaking a language that's foreign to them. And you look on from the outside, you look like you're unraveling because the black sheep is taking on a mantle that they didn't want. We didn't ask for this, but our ancestors depend on someone like us in the bloodline to step forward and to say, you know what? I got it. I'm going to fix it because I'll be damned if the kids that I brought into this world are going to suffer how I suffered to get to where I am.
It's really powerful, baby.
So
Really powerful.
that's how I feel about ancestors. So yes, I have altars. Yes, I do my thing, and I don't care how it looks. I'm at the a point in my life where I'm so in deficit for blood family that the handful that I have left, I don't give a fuck at all. So honestly, what people think about my practices at this point, because the people whose opinions mattered, they are in the ground. They're not here. I connect with them, yes. But all those opinions, all that criticism, all that shit is for the birds. It's not, it doesn't matter anymore.
And
So
I
you,
gotta say, love, I gotta also say, not that anything that you've said needs further justification, but folks, I don't care what you practice. If you see a hungry person and you feed him or her, if you see someone who's in need of something basic, clothing, encouragement, and you give that, I can guarantee if they're really in the right mindset, they would care less about what your practices are, because you're showing them just how just how genuine your practice is when you meet them on a needs level. So I think we need to get out of this mindset of what and how we function is the only way it should be. It should be, that's in people, meeting people in need is meeting people in need. Period. Now, listen, I'm not saying that any and everything goes. But at the same time, what I am saying is to what you said, baby, the criticizers will always have something to criticize. They will always find a chink in the armor, so to speak. So we don't want to give any kind of time and place to that at all, because people will say something about it. They'll say something about somebody doing something wholesome in a very traditional way that maybe be acceptable by a family. Everybody is going to criticize somebody for something. And the fact, baby, that you live so unapologetically and so bold is one of the many, many things that I just love about who you are as a human being. It's just amazing to see. So real quick story, and then I'm going to give some facts and figures, love, if it's okay. So just so y'all know, so I've been playing moderator and all, and I have been biting my tongue because I refer to Teresa privately. I call her Juicy.
oh
I
my
call
God.
I call her that
Pause,
because
flag on the play right now.
I call her that for two reasons. Number
No, you
one,
did not.
I did. Actually did that. I call her that, y'all, because on one hand, she's incredibly gorgeous, and she rings and pushes all of my buttons and rings my bell. Yes, she does. But on the other hand, she
No.
is saturated with understanding, and just like anything that's juicy, you want what it has.
First of
She is
all,
so full of wisdom, knowledge, and understanding that it is just so amazing daily to collect that, to be touched by the thing that she's saturated by. So long before I became a believer in Christ, I used to listen to this certain kind of music, and I still listen to it. I'm a house music DJ presently. I taught myself how to DJ, but in the days before I became a Christian, I used to go to all the house music parties here in Baltimore. House music swept us in here in Baltimore like it did most cities in the late 80s, early 90s. And I was right there swinging my legs and all over the dance floor. House music was and is my thing. It's a passion of mine. And I sat down and I told Teresa what life was like in these clubs. And I would watch people under the influence of the music. And I said to Teresa one day, it's almost like they're being overtaken. And I said, any of us who were dancing, we wanted to get into that zone on the dance floor where you were dancing at such a ferocious rate that it felt like everybody around you had all gone home and it was just you and the music. And I told her it was like we were being overtaken by a spirit. And Teresa said, well, that's exactly what happens in Misas. And I said, what? Do tell. And so we would have a long conversation, me coming from a music perspective, not religious, but music, meeting her in terms of her knowledge about what happens in the mounting process in these mesas. And it became this wonderful understanding and sharing of ideas and experiences. And that's just kind of where it is. But let me hit you all with some facts that I looked up as it relates to mixed faith couples. According to the survey, according to a survey by the Pew Research Center, approximately 39% of American couples are in a mixed faith relationship, where one partner identifies as Christian, in this case, and the other identifies as religiously unaffiliated. So this is one scenario. This number has been steadily increasing over the years, highlighting the religious diversity in American relationships. Another point, and you'll hear time and time again, the Pew Research Center. The Pew Research Center is a very respected, well-established, old research firm whose data is prized. Like people, they feel like when you get something from the Pew, it's real. It's something you can bank on. Another survey conducted by the Research Center in 2014 says that approximately 3%, which is about 2,100,000 people, of American couples include a partner that practices an African traditional religion. This percentage has likely increased in recent years as more people have become interested in exploring their heritage and cultural traditions. However, the number is still relatively small compared to other religious affiliations in the U.S. I can go on and on here, but let me just read one or two more. According to the U.S. Census Bureau, now this is a whole different firm, the Census Bureau. Again, something that I think we can trust because we know they collect data every 10 years, right? According to the U.S. Census Bureau, there are approximately 61.8 million married couples and 8.3 million unmarried couples living together in America. As this was as of 2021. This includes both same-sex and opposite-sex couples. I included that stat just so you know how big the big piece of pie is, or the big cake, rather, and then everything else is a slice of that. So you got 61.8, roughly 62 million couples who are married and 8.3 million unmarried. So together, we're talking about just couples. So you're looking at about 70 million people in our country who are together, married or not. Now, according to a survey conducted by Pew, we're going back to Pew in 2014, less than 1% of Americans practice an African traditional religion. This equates to approximately 3 million people out of a population of over 328 million. However, the number of people is steadily increasing over time. So I just wanted to throw those facts out to you about couples and mixed faith and the ATRs and so forth. So there you have it, folks. Just a few nerdy facts to chew on as we continue the podcast this evening. Thanks, everybody, for listening and tuning in.
Plus, keep in mind that even though they have a standard amount of people that they've surveyed, there are people that are in the religion that will never say that they are in the religion.
Yeah, that's true.
They won't disclose. When I was reading tarot, and I've been reading, it's my 32nd or 33rd year, I wasn't telling anybody that I was reading. Only those very, very close to me knew that this is what I was doing. It wasn't until we got into the storm of COVID that I could no longer maintain. So a website was definitely needed. But even then, I still feel a little strange having that. But it is for administrative purposes. And it's just easier to have something that you can point them in another direction away from you to get their questions answered. It makes life so much easier. So we are past 9, but I still want to keep going here for a little bit. We talked a little bit on previous episodes about, the similarities between the two systems. And I've lived in both systems now. I've experienced, and I think it's so funny. It's interesting that when you're in high worship in a traditional church setting, and I'm not calling any denominations out, but my experience being here in Baltimore now and watching either from the pew or from even in the pulpit when I preached, watching when they say the Spirit is moving through the sanctuary and people are falling out, being on this side of the spectrum now and understanding that you could actually be having a Kundalini awakening when this is happening. That's not something they tell you in church. They say, oh, so and so, we had a high time in the Lord today. So and so caught the Holy Ghost. And I laugh to myself, and I say it all the time. You didn't catch the Spirit caught you in that moment.
Say that one more
Um,
time, Juicy.
A, you didn't catch the Holy Spirit. The Spirit caught you. I think it's, and that's my own little personal joke. I'm not trying to poke fun at any systems, but just being on this side now, wearing these shoes, wearing these lenses now, I see it so different. And there are opportunities in a misa, or even in a church service. The Spirit is moving so quickly, it almost like it's catching. You'll see an opportunity for a mounting to happen, and the person who is being mounted, we call them the horse. And this is where there's a moment for a prophecy to take place. And we talked earlier, a couple of days ago, James, about the prophetic tongue
Uh,
and this divine utterance. The difference is, and I know for sure, in voodoo and in Santeria, when the Orisha mounts you and it acclimates into the body, it will move through the crowd and it will go and give specific messages and advice. And I say to you, Pastor James, is this not prophecy? It is. You're seeing, I think we've all seen this. It's like a video. I've seen it as a meme, but it's where two bodies of water meet, but they don't mix. But it's like a mutual agreement. The waters are different colors, but they never mix. It is the craziest phenomenon. And I feel like this is exactly the line that we are stepping on right here. You're on your side and I'm on mine, and we come together in the middle. But there is a like an unspoken commonality, but there's enough respect there that they are not fully immersing into one another. Um,
oh, no doubt, love. There is definitely some commonality, and I think it's important for us to understand that in both circles, whatever is happening is for the betterment of the group. So when spirit moves in misas, it's so that somebody in that circle, in that gathering, was in need of hearing from heaven. And so the mounting process happens to someone who can give a message to the person in need. In church circles, it's the same way. The spirit will move in these high time moments, revival, tent meetings, whatever you have going on, and certain things will happen.
and
A
again,
person may stand up who says, "Hey, I believe I have something to say to the congregation," and they will speak a prophecy. So they will tell the congregation that something is soon coming, good, bad, or indifferent. And then somebody else's responsibility will be to stand up and say, "Hey, I feel like that what that person said is really from God." Ultimately, the pastor and the religious leaders would be able to sign off on it to say, "I receive that as being really godly." The other thing that can happen in Christian circles, and a lot of you all out there have probably seen or heard this, somebody may stand up and speak in what's called an unknown tongue. And their tongue is going, and you can't make any of what they're saying out, but they should be talking to the betterment and the benefit of the group, in which case somebody else would stand up who has the gift of interpreting tongues, who would then say, "And thus saith the Lord." What that brother or sister just said translates into X, Y, or Z. So you can't have a tongue unless you have an interpretation of it, because the language of the tongue is just between the person and God. It's a private moment, but in these settings, it can be said in turn to the congregation for the purpose of giving a public declaration, in which case, because it is an unknown language, it has to be interpreted. So we need to see things. I think the thing that everybody can appreciate in the Misas is there is an order that happens. And sometimes that order is not always present in some of the church services. We get so afraid that we're going to offend somebody when instead we should have a boldness. I've been in church services where the ministers and the pastors are bold enough to say, "Hey, bro, that's not God. Sit down." Or they'll
Mm-hmm.
take the microphone and say,
Oh,
"You
you
got
know
it."
who that is. You know exactly who that is. That's the should have been a Honda.
Right? Should have been the Honda. I meant to tie my bow tie.
Now say that twice and or three times back to back.
Right? And I mean,
It's
but
BS.
you can't allow these things to be disrupted because again, it's for the benefit of the body. So you make sure that what has to happen can happen to that degree and to that end, and don't let it be upset. Because who knows, somebody may have been at the threshold of life and death, and they really need to hear from heaven. And so Spirit is going to recognize that and deliver to them what they need that'll transform and change their lives and ultimately the life and the direction of the group. And it's just that. I think that's a purity, and I think that's a very loving thing that would have to happen. And I think that is indicative of God. No matter what you call him or her in these settings, when the benefit of the group gets put before the benefit of any one person, that's really divine. I don't care how you slice that loaf of bread. Anyway, that's my 2 cents. Thanks, everybody.
So
On that topic.
yeah, right. So the elephant in the room, and it's always what people, and I'm saying people very loosely, James's relatives, um,
Wow.
who like to come for me because the first thing that they're going to say, and I'm saying they, but it's really just a she, it's about animal sacrifice and about my ancestor conversation that makes her feel uncomfortable. Hello. Animal sacrificing period is a very biblical practice. It was done time and time again, and I'm not going to bore anybody with the the stories. We all know the stories. We all know about painting the blood around the doors, etc., etc. But it is a necessary part of the practice. And I don't want to go too far because I really shouldn't go too far into it. But there are ways that you must share with the Orisha, and it is with your offerings. The Orisha don't require food. Blood is required, and it is for the purification, and it is a part of ceremony, whether it's for a birth, a death, an initiation, getting into the path or the practice, or any other high ceremonies. The animal is not put to waste, and that's all I'm
Say
going
it
to say.
again, Lucy.
The animal does not give its life in vain. It is a sacrifice. It is prayed over, and it is in mutual agreement with the person who it's going to give its life for. It is the ultimate sacrifice. And it is cooked and it is prepared, and then that food is going to feed the village or the room of people who are involved in this misa. So everything is a part of it. It's all very systematic. It makes sense to me. I mean, we go to the grocery store and we're literally going over to a refrigerated section and we're picking meat that nobody prayed over. Nobody didn't thank that animal for its ultimate sacrifice. So why is this such a taboo um, idea that you are in ceremony and you're going to pray over and thank an animal for what is going to give for the removal of whatever the fuck you're dealing with? And for some people, your ass might need a whole fucking elephant and not just a chicken. So I don't want to get too far above myself here, but there are types of offering. Some offerings are called ibos, and in I can speak for Santeria. The energy force that's needed, it is what we call Ashe. And in order for things to be successful in the ritual or in what it is you're trying to do, it's needed for the Orisha to survive in this realm. And if you want to be favored by the Orisha, if you want to just pay respect to the beings that are ultimately involved with the forces of our physical world, the Orisha are the angels of this realm. They delegate their elementals, per se. No one is above God. It's monotheistic. It's only one God. The Orisha are the governing agents of what's happening in this shithole that we call Earth. And that's just as simple as it is. So one must offer Ashe back to them. So all things have some quantity or some level of Ashe. But nothing is more potent than blood. Blood is the life force in this realm. Without it, everything dies. Sacrifice is the method of delivering that ashe to the orishas, and they in turn will use that ashe for the petitioner's benefit. So, one of the principal forms of devotion in Santeria is animal sacrifice. And again, when you hear people talking about, oh, I'm going to XYZ, I'm going to this market because they are looking for halal meat. That's meat that has been prayed over. That's the meat that comes from an animal that gave its life to feed you. And you should say thank you to that animal. It is blessed food. So again, these sacrifices are performed in ceremony for a birth, a marriage, a death, curing of the sick, for initiation for new members coming in, and for priests. And then there's an annual celebration. So yes, the animal, it gives its force, its life force, and then it's prepared and it's cooked. I mean, I don't understand why that's such a hard fucking concept for a regular person, a grown ass adult, and then a Christian to understand what is your issue with sacrifice. Because if you have an issue with it on this end, that means you have an issue with it biblically. And that puts you in a very precarious spot. Because who the fuck are you to say it's only good for what's in this book, but it's not good for over here? Like, that's such a contradiction to me.
Well, I think it's important that people, and this is one of the things that I teach and preach and encourage people to do as a Christian dealing with Christians. I really encourage Christians, get to know the guidelines of your faith, get into the Bible, understand what's being done, what's being asked of you, and why. We typically walk through life so blindly, led and guided by what has been done before us traditionally. There is truth that's different from tradition. Like, for example, there's so many twists and turns now that the church has taken, and we follow that stuff. And if we're not careful, we will be going in the wrong direction. Just because you grew up in a church that did X, Y, and Z does not necessarily mean that what and how you're functioning is in line with what the scriptural definition and prescriptions are. And people need to know that. So, whatever your practices are, understand what they are and why they are, so you can communicate confidently to other people the tenets of your practice if and when you're asked. One of the things that I love about Teresa is that she knows her stuff enough to communicate it. The other thing that Teresa has is, because she was on this side of the fence as a Christian and a minister, she was exposed to a lot. And so she has that duality in terms of she can speak effectively and very in-depthly to both sides of the equation. And not everybody might have that perspective, but whoever you are, learn, study. The scriptures tell Christians to study to show yourself approved. In context, it's talking about study the Bible, but I take it to mean study, period. Know what's around you. Know why it's there. Know what it is before you judge and condemn the people. Because here's the reality of it. As a Christian, I have never been given, and neither has any other Christian on the earth, living or dead. You are never given the ability, the authority, or the wherewithal to judge anybody outside of the church. The judgment that we have in the church is regarding our fellow believers' behavior, how they act and what their mindset is. We do have a right to call each other into accountability, but anybody outside of the faith of Christianity, you can't touch their life. Their life is not your business. So stay out of the business of other people. You don't have that ability. You can say to your fellow brother and sister, "Hey, look, bro, since I think you missed it with X, Y, and Z," you can have that conversation, but you have that in love. You don't do that to be destructive and tear people down. You do it to help people understand, hey, that probably wasn't the best thing to do. And that's the end of that. You don't have a heaven or hell to put them in, and the rest of it is not up to you. But you can call, by the Bible definition of things, you can help your fellow brothers and sisters, anybody outside of the faith of Christianity, their life and what they do is none of your business. That is between them and God and whatever day they stand before him. And that's the end of that story. So we need to get out of this mindset like we're going to set the world straight. No, you share the gospel in love and you keep it pushing. And anybody that's not a believer in Jesus, you leave that alone in terms of their actions and behaviors.
And
God
that's the,
has
and
for
that's the
all of us
gospel
in due
truth.
time. Say it again.
I said, and that's the gospel truth.
That's
And
the
if you
gospel
don't
truth.
believe
It is
me,
what it is.
ask that lady on TikTok, because I put my whole foot up her ass 4 days ago. Don't come for me, because you're not in this. You have blinders on, and you have no idea how lost you, ma'am, really are. But that's a topic for another day.
Yes, we need to get away from this mindset that I'm talking for Christians, that we're going to be the people that fix everything. God never said that, and he never meant for that to happen. Share the word in love and keep moving. Period.
So I'll say this: being where I am now, when let me go back. When I was very much active in the Christian church, I was able to see, and my gifts then was really effective, and it was helpful to one. One memory comes to mind, one specific bishop. I really liked this person, and I felt like he also could see. And I was like being used like the dog and pony show, you know, having me to be his lens, having me to, identify where the spirits were, um, running through the what do you call it, running through the sanctuary and identifying when I saw something on someone. And that was very tiring. And I felt like I know God have something bigger for me. He has that. Like, this was a joke. I'm like, this can't be just it for me. And when I was just bold enough to just step away, and then everybody saw how I had to expose a different bishop for all the things that he was doing. And it was a huge scandal here for a couple months. This was in like 2014. That's when I just knew, I'm like, you know what, this is it for me. I am done with this organized church stuff, because it was such a letdown. But where I am now, doing the work that I do, investigating, and just I feel like I'm working hand in hand with spirit now. I lead so many people to investigating for themselves a relationship with their creator, more so in this way than I was when I was actively ministering in the church setting. um, I want to share like a final thought, if I can, here, and if anyone has questions, we can take some. But we all
Hey,
come
you
to
should
this,
speak on it.
we come to this incarnation with gifts. Everyone comes, and the gifts are tethered to our purpose. And I know many people will say, well, I don't know what my purpose. Yes, you do. You just haven't awakened to your purpose yet. You know your purpose. It is inside of you. You came hardwired. You move into a house. Some houses you have to wait for Verizon to come in and Comcast to put your wires in so you can have internet and so you can have cable. But we came hardwired because our Creator put us in this very specific position so that we could then eventually wake up and find out what the purpose is. It's a perfect alignment. So some of us will spend our entire life, when we discover what our gift is, we'll spend our whole life holding it. We walking around with the gift and we carrying it around and we will show it to others, but we never open it. We just want people to see us with the gift. We want people to know, you know what? You know, I have the gift of X, Y, and Z. Guess what? Newsflash, nobody gives a fuck what your gift is. You know when people start to care? When you apply the gift to their life, when you become a helper to another human. It's basic good humanity tactics. It's nothing special. It's not a special formula. Don't be an asshole to another human. It's that simple. But using your gifts and learning how to use the gifts correctly. Are we ashamed of our gifts? Do we operate in fear? Do we not use our gifts under the fear of rejection or condemnation? That's a big one. Your journey and your gift is unlike the person that's sitting right next to you. Just because the two of you came from the same parenting, the two of you work at the same job, your shit is not going to be the same as her shit. Your gifts are going to be different. It's how we were perfectly created because it's the tapestry. Everybody has a thread. Your thread is not going to look like my thread, but when you put all the threads together, it makes this big beautiful tapestry. Your path is divinely orchestrated, and your gift could be assigned to someone who came specifically across your path for healing. And when you refuse to use your gift, when you withhold using that gift or to speak something, to speak a word or to speak life to that person, you're preventing them from growing and discovering theirs. Everything is perfectly timed. So, outside of this, in the relationship that now I share with this human, James, we are celebrating the most beautiful and the diversity of the beliefs. I'm practicing an Afro Cuban traditional religion, and he's following Christianity. And the connection, it is special and it's unique. It is rooted in mutual respect and understanding. We are embracing the spiritual journeys. We're learning, finding the strength in the differences and the joy in the shared values of love and respect and kindness. And together, we're creating a space where an open dialogue of cultural richness flourish, allowing us to learn from one another and to grow both individually and as a couple. And I want to say this. I'm fighting three battles. I am in a interfaith relationship with a person who is and who used to be a pastor. And I'm over here calling myself a whole witch because that's what I am. When you break it down, I am doing things on different levels in different realms. And society says, well, this is what you are. And I accept because this is my path. We are also in a relationship of different cultures. He is a Yankee. He is American. And I am American by soil, but I am Caribbean. I am West Indian. So the differences there are vast. I have to speak like this to make sure I'm getting my point across. Specifically, not just for him, but for most people who don't share the same tongue as me. So that's a difference. And then we have the third one, which is the sorest thorn in my ass, is in Baltimore in the United States, I don't look like I am from where I'm from. I look like these people up here. So there's the racial difference. So I'm fighting three dogs in three different fights to make sure that I am securing peace for myself. And even in those three fights, this is the most peaceful that I have ever been. So hats off to you. And guess what? He pays bills, y'all.
Wow. Yeah, I think
So
it's important for people, if I can say this, my love, I think it's important for everybody to understand everything you said, but there's a piece that you mentioned a few minutes ago in understanding your purpose. And while you were queuing everybody up to talk about gifts, I had just reached for my cell phone because I saw this placard earlier today that I wanted to share with you before we got on the podcast, but I want to share it now for a few seconds. There are two lists of gifts. By the way, everybody, I'm from a land far away. It's called East Baltimore, but we'll talk about that later. Anyway, there are two lists of gifts in the Bible. One is found in the book of First Corinthians. The other is found in Romans. And I'll just read you the list because this is pretty good stuff. So there's the gift of exhortation or encouragement. Some people are encouragers by definition, like they just love bringing uplifting things to other people. That's a spiritual gift. There is a gift of giving. People who are generous with their financial means and their resources. That is actually a gift, y'all. There's a gift called help or serving, and that's the person that you can always count on to be a team member. Whatever the issue is, hey, I'll do that. I'll help with that. Who do I need to go see? What committee do I need to be in? Like that person who you always appreciate being there and being part of a team. There's a gift of prophecy. There's a gift of leadership. There's certain people who are gifted in their interactions with teams and with people that need to report to them. That is a gift. There's the gift of mercy. And then there's also, lastly, the gift of teaching. So there are 8 gifts that are outlined in this one list in the book of Romans. Then there's a longer list in Corinthians that is administration, the discerning of spirits. Some people have a gift of faith where they just have this extraordinary capacity to believe what the Bible says and to do it. There's a gift of healing where there are people that walk in this earth realm who have the ability to lay hands on others and see that person change in their physical, medical condition. That is actually a gift. There's the gift of helps, which is people who, like I said from the first, people who just want to be a accompaniment to others, and they know how to be. In other words, I call it the person who is comfortable with being number two. They don't have to be the first person out there, but they're comfortable with playing a role on the team. Like that's a real important gift. And if you've ever been a supervisor, you really appreciate that person. There's the gift of tongues and the gift of the interpretation of tongues. And then there's the gift of the what's called the word of knowledge. People that just know stuff and they know it supernaturally. They may think they know it as a natural inclination. We call that gift intuitiveness. See how it translates?
mhm.
People just know stuff, and you ask yourself, how in the world do you know that? For example, if I may, with one more Teresa story. So I'm an author, and I've written to date 22 books to my credit, by the grace of God. I was doing one book, I think it was 3 books ago, and I was walking through the house with the book because I was really excited that the proof had come through the mail from my publisher. And I was showing Teresa the cover, and Teresa, at this point, she had only written 2 of her 6 books, and I'm gonna tell you why that's important in just a minute. So she looked at my book and she said, "No wonder your books ain't selling. This cover is straight trash." And I was like, "Well, damn, baby, you didn't have to hit me that hard." She was like, "Let me show you this cover." She said, "This looks like some elementary school artwork." She said, "If you change this cover, you'll get more sales." And so I said to her out of ego, I said, "I've written 20 plus books. You've written 2. And you're telling me about covers?" She said, "I'm telling you, listen to me. You change that cover, you'll sell more books." So there I was in my ego and a little bit in my feelings, I must admit. And guess what I did, y'all? Knowing how incredible Teresa's insight has been to myself and other people, I made some adjustments with that cover. And guess what? That book is one of my better selling books. Now, I didn't make the New York Times selling list, but I sold a lot more books than I had in the past based on what she now. How does she know that? She just walks with a knowledge. I told you she walks with this magic, as we talked about a few sessions ago. So she has that gift. She just knows stuff, and it's just a part of who she is. So that's one. I'm coming to the end. There's a gift of miracles, a gift of prophecy, and a gift of what's called the word of wisdom. There are people that just know stuff, and then there are people that have a insight as to how things need to work together. They have a gift that knows how to connect dots, and that wisdom is what's talked about here. Teresa has a little bit of that too. Folks, you know a lot of this stuff if you've ever spent time with grandmama and Uncle Joe and all of the elders in your family. A lot of our elders walk with some of these things, but we may not know what they were called, the gifts I'm talking about. And they may be called other things in other faith and other practices. So just understand, these are the things that are there. The Bible says they're given to us by the Holy Spirit, and they're never taken away. So no matter how good or bad you are, God will never go, let me get that back from you there, bro. When you get it, you have it for life.
And you have to use it. So many people in here, I can count some of these names, are cooks and bakers, and they have the wisdom. They don't use measurement. They just know exactly when to stop when they're pouring in ingredients. And if you ask any baker, professional or non-professional, they'll say, I don't measure. I know what it takes for it to be successful. I know what it takes for it to taste good. This is how my mom taught me. This is how my grandmother taught me. And that is wisdom that we pass down, hopefully, to our children and our grandchildren. That this is the legacy. This is the bloodline, ancestral stuff I'm talking about. Having the gift of just knowing, the innate knowing, it runs through all of us. And if you're lucky, and if you are from the Caribbean like me and some of the people in the chat, we just be knowing shit and we can't explain it. And I feel that is indigenous to the land that we come from. We just be knowing. And it's, we want to credit, family members, but really it's an ancestral thing. So
And
if
hey,
anybody
love, I
has,
got to say this too. And fellas, you got to hear me as a man. Any men out there, I need you to hear this loud and clear. Listen, men, and we don't want to give women the credit. We don't want to acknowledge the gift that women themselves are to our race. But women are an extraordinary gift. God has used women so many times because women have a willingness to surrender themselves to certain spiritual workings. So, any man out there, if you are connected to a good woman, listen to her because chances are most of the women that I have ever met have a more spiritual attuned kind of ability than the men do. They just do. So understand, a woman has been created by God. Remember, the Bible says that God created man, but he fashioned the woman. So there's something special, something different, something unique about women. And we need to appreciate and celebrate that, men. So if you have a good woman in your life, listen to her and don't just shrug off the suggestions that she gives you, because those suggestions could be life changing. Teresa has said three things to me, and I've taken those suggestions and created three different businesses. And that's true. My coaching practice was something because Teresa had a word that she spoke to me and it has blossomed. I have a coaching practice that has 31 five-star reviews at Pleasant. I've been cited all over by the coaching practice process. I've helped hundreds of people. I'm not boasting. I'm simply saying that whole process was started because that wonderful woman that I'm connected to saw something spiritually. She said it to me, and at that moment, I was at least keen enough to hear her and act on it. And it's been a blessing ever since. So, folks, listen to the women in your lives.
Yeah.
They are a blessing.
Copyright infringement. You need to pay me because I need to be benefiting from this coaching that you're giving.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah.
Really?
You've taken all my curriculum. I get it.
Now, truthfully speaking, folks, I've made Teresa is my coach advisor. I report to her when it comes to my coach practice because she has that much wisdom and insight that I wanted to make sure. So, Teresa is basically my supervisor when it comes to my coaching practice. And I always run scenarios by her. She gives me some wisdom and some insight. Like she is that endowed. That's why I call her Juicy, yo.
Wow. You done. You're done for today. If anybody has any questions, I'm here.
You gonna
If
turn my mic off after this?
Yep, turn it off. You're done. I'm unplugging you.
Wow.
Any questions? If not, I'm going to give my final thoughts and everybody can go to bed.
I'm good to go, love.
Okay. So, thank you all for joining us on this enlightening journey into the beautiful realms of the Orisha, ancestral veneration, and the sacred practice of creating altars. It's always a privilege to share space with you, and we hope that you feel inspired to explore these rich traditions in your own lives. And remember, it's not just about the practices that we engage in, but also about the connections that we build. Even when that means dating outside of our faith, love knows no boundaries and it can open doors to new understandings and experiences. We appreciate each one of you for tuning in and sharing your thoughts with us. Don't forget to catch us every Thursday evening, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, for deep dives into these fascinating topics. We look forward to having you back with us next week. And to answer tonight's question, can you date outside of your faith? My answer is yes. This is Teresa Angela alongside with co-host James W. Falcon signing off from the From Scratch podcast. Until next time, stay curious and keep exploring your unique spiritual journeys. Maferefun Yamaya, Maferefun Shanko. Good night.